Do you miss those simple mining games where you dig for treasures or clear the screen of enemies? I'm talking about classics like Dig Dug, Boulder Dash or Motherlode. What made those games so great was their simplicity. You could pick them up, play for a bit and have fun, no strings attached. There are not many modern games that follow that design philosophy. Dawn Keeper and Steamworld Dig come to mind, but there's not much else out there. That's why, for the past 6 months, I've been working on my own game, aiming to capture the intuitive gameplay of the classics while adding my own unique twist. The game is called Ore Blaze, and in this devlog, I'll show you how I am creating it. At first, all I had were scattered ideas, a dwarf miner digging through a mine collecting treasure. But before I could add complexity, I had to nail the basics to see if the concept was even feasible, especially since I'm working on this game completely solo in my spare time. Therefore, the first prototype included just the core mechanics, although the graphics were rudimentary. Just basic placeholders to fill the spaces until I was ready to start working on the visuals. To be honest, the lack of real graphics was actually a good thing at this point. It allowed me to quickly iterate on new mechanics like wall jumping, containers for depositing treasures, and the first enemies of the game, spiders. These spiders couldn't harm the player, but they would eat any gems left uncollected. Not all the mechanics made it to the current version of the game though. For example, I added these goblins, which I call gem snatchers. They would spawn periodically to steal gems you had deposited in the containers, and you had to be near them to spook them and recover the stolen treasure. The idea sounded fun on paper, but when I tested it in-game, it ended up being more annoying than anything. It made the player go back to the surface of the mine too often, which broke the flow of the game. But the failed gem snatchers led to another idea, one that not only stayed in the game, but also became one of its unique selling points. I'm talking about the King. The King is the one who granted the player permission to mine for treasures in exchange for regular tributes. These tributes would reset the King's patience, which in practice was a time-based resource the player had to manage. If the King's patience ran out, he would revoke the mining permit and it would be game over. With the introduction of the King's patience, I had a game over condition, but I still needed a proper objective for the player. That's when I came up with the idea of an adamant core deep within the mine that the player would need to recover to win the run. I wanted to use a fantasy material for this core, and originally I considered adamantine, inspired by Dwarf Fortress. But after some research, I discovered that the word adamant has much older origins, meaning something like a legendary rock or mineral, which felt like the perfect fit for what I was aiming for. The next big step was adding procedural generation for the mine. Until then, I had been using tile-based terrain that I created by hand just to test things out, but I wanted the game to have variety and replayability, so pre-made levels wouldn't cut it. That's when I implemented a lever generation system to make the mine different with each run. It wasn't anything too fancy at first, mainly randomizing the hardness of each tile and the distribution of ores, but it laid the groundwork for the future terrain features I'd add in the coming months. At that point, the game was starting to take shape, and I had a clearer vision of which mechanics would fit. I even dared to send the prototype to a few friends, and their feedback was positive for the most part. However, it quickly became clear that I had to tackle the big elephant in the room, the graphics. I've been working as a software engineer full-time for a long time, so the coding part wasn't an issue. But the graphics, that was a real challenge, especially since I wanted to develop the game completely on my own. To tackle this, I decided to go with a retro-style pixel art for the visuals. The simple style made it easier to create my own sprites, and when I couldn't make something from scratch, I customized publicly available assets. This is how the game currently looks. It might not be the most fancy or beautiful, but I think it fits the retro-inspired gameplay and works well overall. With the core gameplay and the visual style in place, development gained momentum, and I added exciting features like new ores, magic items, mining tools, and an economy involving the miner's guild and the king's steward. I even dabbled in sound design and music, challenging aspects of development, especially for a solo indie developer like me. Of course, the game isn't finished yet, and there is still plenty to implement and polish, but if you're interested, you can add the game to your wishlist on Steam right now. I'm aiming to finish the game sometime in 2025 and will be uploading more devlogs to dive deeper into its mechanics as I work toward its release. Thank you for watching, and until next time.